Fanatics. Happy New Year, welcome to 2020, and welcome to a new episode of Sports Fanatics United. I'm your host, as always, Eric Good, and my co-host, Max Donald Briggs, has made it to 2020 with me also. Max, welcome to Season 2, buddy.
Yeah, glad to be here. Lucky to make it, and I'm ready to see what 2020 has in store for us.
Hopefully, Keith can be back with us next episode, but today we've got basically the deputy to my entire empire, my Sims and my podcast, Kansas City Chiefs superfan Jerry Hayes. Jerry, welcome back to the show,
What's up,
buddy.
guys? How you doing?
Doing good.
Doing good. Glad to have you here.
All right, guys, let's start this episode off on a serious note. As now that you've all probably heard, former NBA Commissioner David Stern has passed away this past Wednesday at the age of 77. Jerry, give us your thoughts on the legacy of David Stern.
Yeah, I mean, Stern, he was he's easily the most influential commissioner the NBA's ever had. He took it international. He's the main reason that a lot of the international guys started jumping over to the NBA back when Sabonis first jumped over. And then he also introduced the one-and-done rule for a while. I'm still sad that went away because a lot of the college guys, it was interesting seeing those guys flip over, but alas, it was eventually flipped away. Those are probably the two biggest things I took out of his whole commissionership, and I know he was a great guy and everything like that. I know there's a few other things other people will remember him for, but those are the two main things I remember him for.
Yeah, it sucks to see him go, and rest in peace, David Stern. He's probably the most critical commissioner in all of sports, and he came in right at the right time for his sport because the NBA was suffering hardcore, and he literally turned it into one of the most popular sports in the world.
Right.
So the guy was an immense genius and a marketing master, and he turned the NBA, what we know today, into the powerhouse that it is. And he'll always be remembered for that, and it sucks to see him go.
And I in this one note too that as you both could probably attest the same way that I can. Social media can be a terrible place sometimes, and some of the comments that I saw basically are saying that should have never vetoed that Lakers deal with CP3. If you're still harboring that grudge, and I'm probably one of the biggest Lakers fans that you'll know. But if you're still harboring that grudge and then disparaging this man's name all because of a trade that didn't work out for you, let it go. Just let it go.
Yeah, that's bullshit on people's parts. I mean, he was trying to do his best to keep the balance of power, kind of evened out in the NBA and not make it what it is today. And you can't knock the guy for that. He was trying to do the best job possible for what he had in front of him. So people bashing him for that, or kind of, it's just sad to see because he really was the thing that made the sport what it is today. So to knock him for that one thing is kind of stupid in my opinion, because without him, we wouldn't have the NBA like we have it right now. So you can't be mad at that.
Without him, we might not have the NBA period, because when he came in, like you said, they were suffering hard. The ideas and the strategy that he implemented basically to save the league has basically turned it probably into the most globally recognized league outside of any soccer leagues, basically internationally. All right. Let's move on to basically the time of the year that we all look forward to as football fans, the NFL playoffs. You've got Max and Jerry's Chiefs. The Patriots are back in. The Ravens, the Titans, Texans, and who's at 15? Damn.
Bills.
The Bills.
Yeah,
Damn,
Bills.
how can I forget the Buffalo Bills? And I predicted them to make the playoffs. And and on the NFC side, you've got the Seahawks, Eagles, Vikings, Saints, Packers, and 49ers. Um, Starting with you, Max. All right, what would, like, for instance, let's just say, what would it mean to the Kansas City Chiefs if they won the Super Bowl this year?
Well, what it means is we've gone 50 years without a Super Bowl appearance or a Super Bowl win. So, for as dominant as they've been over the last decade, well, essentially since 2013, it would mean so much not only to the franchise but to the city, because here in Kansas City we've known a lot of losers, or we've known a lot of good teams that find a way to lose, especially in critical games. Look at last year's AFC Championship game where we were essentially an offsides call away from making it to the Super Bowl, and judging by the performance of the Rams in the Super Bowl, we could have possibly went in there and just waffle stomped them hardcore.
I was waiting for that. The first waffle stomp of 2020, everybody.
You're welcome. I've been waiting to get that one in there. So, yeah. So essentially, what it means is everything. I mean, they're a team that has been there since the start of the NFL that we know today. Our founder was Lamar Hunt, the guy that created the AFL and created the Super Bowl and took us into this new era of football over the last 50 years. And it would just mean so much to, one, get the Lamar Hunt trophy back here in Kansas City where it rightfully belongs, and then go to the Super Bowl and win that. You think the Royals parade here was big. You think, some of these other parades that have happened for the Super Bowl were big. That's going to pale in comparison to how big that's going to be here in Kansas City. I mean, it's going to be ridiculous, and we're really looking forward to it. And this is the first year that I think we have the best team, a complete team, to compete for that Super Bowl trophy and win it. So that's where I'm at with it.
Jerry, what would it mean to you as a Chiefs fan if Kansas City can bring home the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah, I mean, Max threw out a lot of the 50-year Super Bowl drought stuff that I had marked down. Another thing that it would do, winning the Super Bowl, it would firmly pass the torch from Tom Brady to Patrick Mahomes on who's QB to fear in the playoffs in the AFC side. Because last year we saw him, he went toe-to-toe with Brady, and like Max said, we were an offsides call away from potentially a Super Bowl win. In Mahomes' first year starting, where he threw 50 touchdown passes and 5,000 yards. This year he had a very great season. He had like Alex Smith's best season in Kansas City, missing 3 games basically, throwing 4,000 yards, 26
and
touchdowns,
being
5 interceptions. So that just shows how good he is, even whenever he has an off year, in quotations. So going.
Well, and heck, he was injured even before those
he
3
got
games
injured
off with an ankle injury for 3 other games.
Until he dislocated the kneecap, and then he finally came back, and both those injuries were like 90%. That was the best he had felt all year. So he's been playing hurt. He's been on the injury report in Kansas City since week 2, all the way through week 17. So it just proves how tough the guy is, how great he's going to be, and how dominant and how fearful the league should be of him going forward. And if he can win the Super Bowl this year, I think it would firmly put him in that category as, we got to watch out for this guy come the playoffs.
And that has been Chiefs Fans United for you all. but no, seriously, I agree with the points that y'all both said, especially with the fact of if you can finally take down the giant that is the legend of Tom Brady and get to the Super Bowl and win it. I mean, that's basically the beginning of a passing of the torch moment, because let's be honest, Brady hasn't had his best season this year, and I mean, the Patriots, they still have looked good, especially defensively, but as far as Tom is concerned, it looks like Father Time's caught up with him.
Undefeated. Father Time's always undefeated, man. It's going to get him one day or another, and it's coming real quick for him.
And that basically leads me into the next question I ask. Jerry, what would it mean if the New England Patriots can bring in trophy number 8. I mean, trophy number 7. Damn, I'm giving them extra one already.
You,
What?
you cut that shit out, Eric.
But what would it be if they could bring in trophy number 7 and finally topple the Pittsburgh Steelers?
So the main thing that I take away from it is it would establish New England's run of from 2015 to 2020 as the most um, dominant run by a single team in NFL history. You got the Cowboys in the mid 90s, the 49ers run with Joe Montana, but then you got Tom Brady. I believe it'd be number 4 in this 2015 to 2020 run if he would win it all this year. And I mean, that's just unprecedented. And then with the potentially, with the amazing defense they had this year, this is probably the best defense they've had throughout Tom Brady's entire run. I know a lot of people disagree and say some of those early to mid 2000s, but I think this one is just, it's just above all, just the way it's been performing. I know they've beaten a lot of bad teams, but it's a good defense. It held Patrick Mahomes to 23 points whenever Kansas City went to New England. They held him to 23 points. I mean, that's a good offense that you don't see that happen to a lot. So that defense is good whether you want to accept it or not.
You feel like it's better than that 2004 defense they had when they faced the Eagles in the Super Bowl?
I think it might be.
Okay. Max, what do you think it means to the Patriots?
Well, I think it would be vindication for Tom Brady saying that he can play forever. I mean,
till he's damn near 200.
The guy must have made a deal with the devil or some bullshit, because if he wins the Super Bowl this year, I don't think you can go into next year going, well, Father Time, it's going to catch up with him. No, that guy's doing something to make himself the top of the world every year. So you can't really you can't dismiss him. You can't throw the Patriots away. It would just mean vindication for Brady and for Belichick. Belichick's a mastermind, and it would make me scared not only for the AFC but for the entire NFL, that even if Brady doesn't come back next year and goes to a different team, I'd be afraid to see another quarterback go in there and take that exact Patriots team with maybe a few additions on the wide receiver core and a tight end, and they could dominate still, and their run would never stop as long as Belichick's there, because that guy could possibly just prove that he is insane at coaching and nobody can stop him. That's what I see. I mean, Jerry hit on a lot of the points, but that's kind of the other side of the argument, or the other side of it is, what happens if Brady does leave? And if Brady leaves, new quarterback comes in, they could dominate still as long as Belichick's there.
And to go back to your Father Time argument, though, I think that you could actually use it now, but if he sits there and he still wins the Super Bowl, I mean, it's like basically to anybody that's still a doubter or anything of like, oh, once Father Time hits him, he's going to really fall off. Okay, well, Father Time hit him, but basically, like Peyton Manning, he was able to at least be good enough to lead a team to a championship. So now, what's your next argument? Because, that one's there. It's clearly here, but, Tom Brady at 60% is probably better than 3/5 of the quarterbacks in the entire league currently starting.
Well, exactly, and then you've got to factor in the mental aspect of it. Tom Brady's one of the smartest quarterbacks ever to play the game. So even if he's at, 50% of his former self, that mental aspect is only growing stronger because he gets more and more information as the years go on, and he gets smarter about how he goes about things. So there's that as well.
Just think if you had Tom Brady as the quarterback of a team like the Chicago Bears.
Oh, they'd be scary.
That's scary thought. It's scary to think of. So,
considering that their wide receivers are really fast, and you could just dump the ball off within like 1.5 seconds, get them just a couple yards downfield, do a little bubble screen to them, and let them get in space and go to town. I mean, Cohen, Gabriel, all those guys.
Can't forget Allen
that would
Robinson
be insane.
Oh no,
Yeah,
definitely can't.
he would be. Oh my God, it'd be the best wide receiver core Brady would ever have. Because I don't think I can remember a year where Brady had more than like one really
You
good wide receiver and then a couple upper
pretty
mid
sure he
level
had
wide
Welker and Moss
receivers.
in '07. I'd say that
Yeah,
was
I was gonna
probably
say
his
yeah
best receiver core.
that undefeated season to me was his best one. But just in that
It would be up
scenario,
there.
it'd be it'd be top three for sure. But
Mm-hmm.
I apologize to you, Derek, Barber, Vogel. I mean, I'm sorry they tease y'all with Brady on the Bears, but hey, it is what it is. But let's move on to the Bears' rival, the Green Bay Packers. What would it mean to them and to Aaron Rodgers if they can bring home the Lombardi Trophy this year?
I think it would mean McCarthy wasn't McCarthy was holding back Aaron Rodgers. I think that's essentially what it comes down to because we all know Aaron Rodgers is essentially the best quarterback in the NFL as far as physical gifts. And we've said that for years. It's always been kind of a Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, Manning type NFL. And everybody would always qualify the Packers as having the best quarterback in the NFL as far as physical gifts. And it's surprising that they've only had the one Super Bowl for him and the one win for him. So it would almost shoot a signal up saying that McCarthy was the one holding him back, and now he's got a coach in LaFleur that really is just letting Rodgers do what he needs to do and letting him take over the offense and go out there and sling it all over the field and win. So I think it would also mean some relief for some Packers fans because I follow the team. I've got a lot of family in that area, and they're all Packers fans. And every year they're like, "Well, we got a great team, but we're just not sure how they're going to perform." And that kind of sucks, especially when you have a quarterback as good as Rodgers, and they've only got the one Super Bowl. So it would mean a lot to them because they wouldn't be wasting Aaron Rodgers' career essentially.
Yeah, and I mean the one thing that I would take out of them winning the Super Bowl is the fact that Aaron Rodgers, he has all the stats to be the best QB in Packers history, and I think another one would successfully pass him past Brett Favre in that category right there, taking him from the combination of between him Favre at 2-1 to putting him firmly at number one because he's the most talented QB. I know Favre had a lot more arm talent, but Rodgers' mind is a lot more there than Favre's was because he didn't have all the interceptions, everything like that. I think it would successfully put him number one in Packers history as far as QB wise. To the outside mind, I know a lot of Packers fans think that, but to the media and everything like that, it would successfully put him number one.
Oh, no doubt.
Right, and I believe also that like you said, Jerry, it would basically to put him above Favre because a lot of people they got them neck and neck and saw and basically and also get that monkey off their back because Green Bay at the beginning of last decade, yes, I can't believe that I'm saying that right now, but at the beginning of the last decade, Green Bay had this team that was set up and you felt like they're going to dominate the NFC this entire decade almost. But it seems like either after that Super Bowl win against the Steelers, it was either the defense would let them down or injuries would hamper them or just something would pop up and just derail Green Bay. And I don't know. I mean, if Green Bay to me, this is probably the best defense that Rodgers has had to complement the offense. And I mean, it could be basically validating that the 20s could belong to the Packers. I mean, what are y'all thoughts?
It could at least belong to him for a specific part of it
Well,
because Rodgers is getting a little older. I think he's like 33, 34. But if Brady's shown us anything, I mean, he could still have another 10 years.
Exactly.
yeah, let me hold on. Let me look up how old Aaron Rodgers is really quick because let's see.
I can tell you he's not in his 40s.
Wow.
He's
30.
36.
Oh.
He's 36.
Oh.
So there's I don't see him dominating much past a couple more years. I mean, look at the fall off for Brady, and Brady was never the quarterback with the most physical gifts. Like, sure, he was a great quarterback, but a lot of that came down to his mental approach to the game. Rodgers, if you're factoring in the physical ability that he has, I could see that dropping off in 2 to 3 years, hardcore. So there's only a couple more years left of that Rodgers Packers left. So it would mean a lot to them because essentially they've wasted. When did the Packers win their Super Bowl? Was that
2011, I think.
2011. So that they've essentially wasted nine
They
years
pretty much
of Aaron
wasted his
Rodgers.
entire prime. Yeah, it was 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they've wasted his entire prime. They also let him sit behind Favre for, 3
I think
years?
it was 3.
Mm-hmm. Right around
Yeah,
there.
so they've actually, honestly, they've handled Aaron Rodgers wrong. They've essentially wasted one of the best quarterbacks we've seen hit the field in the last 30 years. They've wasted his talents by not putting the talent around him or not giving him the right coaching or, sitting him behind Favre, who was definitely old but still performing. But there could have been a lot of what ifs in his
Yeah, because he
career.
didn't even start starting until he was 25, and at that point he's getting to the point to where he probably should have been starting probably in 06 whenever he was 23. But because the Packers had so much respect for Favre, they just wasted another 2 years of his career right there, and could have been even better through those 2 years if you had a younger mind and Rodgers compared to Favre.
Yeah, just imagine how many less interceptions there would have been on the field with Rodgers on the field versus Favre. It's definitely a what if scenario with Rodgers if he doesn't make it this year.
Is I got his stats up right now. He only has 2 seasons ever with double-digit interceptions, and that's with 13 and 11 in 08 and 2010.
Wow, that is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that's got to put him top 3 all time for like TD to INT.
It'd be something
ratios.
ridiculous like that.
I remember years ago, I remember hearing stats that he's number 1 in TD INT ratio. And I find it hard to believe that he's dropped from there just because how far ahead he was of number 2, if I remember correctly.
Well, I'm just speaking off the top of my head when it comes to that because I'm not sure. I know Manning had some pretty rough years in the start of his career.
Oh, yeah.
Where he was like throwing like 18 or 19 interceptions or 20 interceptions a year back in like 98, 99. And then, but after that, he kind of reined it back in and was kind of the mid, like 5-6 interceptions a year, if I remember correctly. He's the only other person that really comes to mind when it comes to that stat. Him and Drew Brees, because I don't think Brees really is too careless with the ball over his career.
And with you mentioning Drew Brees now, my next question is going to be, like, what would it mean, Jerry, for Brees and the Saints if they can bring home another Super Bowl trophy?
Yeah, I mean, bringing home another Super Bowl trophy and potentially bringing home the Super Bowl MVP with Brees, I think it would do a lot of vindication to everyone who gets on him by not having any MVP awards. It's like, I know he should have had one back in the early 2010s, whenever I believe it was Manning, or maybe late 2000s, whenever Manning got one over him, and he was just a much better QB, but they gave it to Manning instead. I think it would be out there like, hey, he has 2 Super Bowl rings. He is good. He's just never been given the respect of the voters for the MVP. You can take him serious as a top 10 QB of all time, because I know there's a lot of people that try to discredit him for that because he didn't have that award. He didn't have the first team All-Pros like a lot of people have. But that second Super Bowl ring with the stats he has, it's hard to deny him.
Yeah,
No doubt.
yeah, because I mean, you look at it like this too. Drew Brees, look at it to the filter of this season. Okay, it's to the point where not only you have to give those credit and adulation to Brees, but you also have to give it to Bridgewater
Oh yeah.
because Bridgewater was good enough. Well, not just good enough. Bridgewater was more than good enough to basically not only just keep the team above, just floating. I mean, he was driving the damn ship like it belonged to him. New Orleans, the only game they lost was the game that Breeze actually got injured in and started, and Bridgewater came in relief. But other than that, I mean, I don't think he lost another game while he was starting, did he?
No, he
Yeah,
was
5-0
what, five
starting.
and
5 and
zero.
0, I think so.
I think.
Yeah, and I mean, not only would that put that validation for Breeze, but now as far as Bridgewater goes, it's like, I mean, if Breeze decides to retire as a Saints fan, it's like, man, we're still good for years.
Yeah. I mean, another part of that is why can't Teddy Bridgewater get his shot in the NFL, especially with the way Lamar Jackson has proved that that type of quarterbacking can win big time and put up the numbers that he has. Why can't Teddy Bridgewater get his shot? And it sucks to see the career of Teddy Bridgewater where he had the injury in Minnesota, lost his job essentially, kind of bounced around, and now he's ended up on a contender, and then proved that he is good enough to be in this
Mm-hmm.
league. I, I'd like to see. I'd like to see him get his shot, whether it be on the Saints or another team. I would truly enjoy that. And honestly, going back to what does it mean for the Saints if they win the Super Bowl? If Drew Brees gets that Super Bowl win, do you think he rides off into the sunset? Because I mean, he's
He's
what,
40.
39, 40? He's 40. So essentially that's the end of most QB careers. I mean, that's pretty much when Manning ended. That's Tom Brady's still going, which sucks. um,
I would see Breeze as riding
but
off into the sunset because I mean, what else is there left for him to
Yeah.
prove? I mean, of course, quarterbacks come back because at times they love the game, they love the preparation and all that. But I mean, hell, as you've heard plenty of players say, when they get up to the age, training camp's a bitch, and a lot of them tell you if it wasn't for the fact that you had to go through the off-season program and training camp, they played till they're probably about 50, 60 years old. But it's just the fact that you, in June, July, August, when you're beating yourself up and nobody's looking besides your team and whatnot, that's what causes him to retire. And it's like, does he feel like he could deal with that another year? And you know that
well, exactly. I mean, and honestly, hell, I'm 30 and I hurt all the time, and I'm not a professional football player, but I'm in construction, so I put my body through hell most days. So, a quarterback getting hit by a 310 defensive tackle day in and day out, or week in week out for 4 or 5 months a year, that puts a lot of wear and tear on a body. And heck, what was it? Was it the NFC Championship game where Brett Favre was on the Vikings and was
NFC
just getting
Championship game,
murdered
down
hmm
the
in the
eight.
pocket?
hmm
Yeah, and he took those pictures after the game, and his whole leg and like side were just fucking black. I mean, that happens when you get older. I mean, your body can't handle that kind of punishment. And if Drew Brees is a smart guy, or at least I think he's a smart guy, I think if he gets that Super Bowl win, he's definitely riding off into the sunset. He's like, deuces, guys. I've done everything I can do. I'm not putting my body through hell anymore. I want to be there for my kids when they get a little bit older, and when I'm older, I want to be around. Because you look at some of these other NFL guys that played until their mid to late 30s, and their quality of life has deteriorated quite a bit. So it's a little bit different for a quarterback because quarterbacks are pretty protected nowadays. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with that. But I think he's a smart guy and would retire if he won. and then that turns the reins over to Teddy Bridgewater, and then we get to see what can really be done with him for
Yeah,
a
and
full season.
I think Breeze will retire too if they end up winning it all. But I think secretly the Saints are hoping that he'll retire too, because I mean you got Teddy Bridgewater, he'll be turning 28 next season. You got pretty much the entire prime of Teddy Bridgewater right there on your team sitting there, and you've already seen what he can do. It's like in those 5 games he started. I'm not counting that first game because he didn't throw any real. Um, the first game he didn't throw any touchdowns or anything like that. But through all of his starts, he was 9-2 touchdown to interception wise. It's like he played really good. And then you got Michael, yeah, and then you got
That's
Michael Thomas on that
fantastic.
team. You got Alvin Kamara on that team. You got Cameron Jordan over on the defense. You got Ryan Ramczyk protecting the right side of the offensive line, which has slowly turned into the most important side of the offensive line. It's like you got a good team that Teddy Bridgewater can um, that he can pretty much game manage and you be very competitive and potentially win more Super Bowls. It's like you just got that sitting on your team. You don't have to waste more draft capital getting another QB. It's like I don't know what else management over there could ask for.
All right, guys, let's turn to their opponent on Sunday, the Minnesota Vikings, and the $84 million man, as Keith loves to call them. If they can bring home the Lombardi Trophy, what would it mean to them?
Well, it would mean vindication for the $84 million contract that they paid Kirk Cousins, even though it seems like a very bad deal, not only for the Vikings but for any franchise, really. I mean, yes, he's a decent quarterback, but deserving that amount of money
Fully
and
guaranteed
all
too. Yep.
guaranteed, yeah, and fully guaranteed is kind of ridiculous. And everybody in the NFL is like, are you sure you're okay, Vikings? Did you get a concussion too? Because it's just a ridiculous deal, and it would be vindication for him because they're like, well, we had to do it,
It paid
and
off.
we did it, and we won.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it would play out in their favor, and it would make them look like the smartest people in the room. But in reality, probably not the case. I don't see them doing anything in the playoffs, um, solely because of Kirk Cousins. I mean, it's a tale of two Kirk Cousins.
I mean,
Do you get the good one or
It's
do you get the
I
bad
mean,
one? it,
let's just call it what it is. When it comes to a big game, Kirk Cousins just doesn't show up,
Yeah, it's
well, yeah, he's what 0-9
something
in
like
Monday
that.
Night Football
or
games.
not. And then, I mean, he's never won a playoff game. It's just anytime. It seems like anything that's after either 4:25 kickoff or when the calendar changes to a new year, Kirk Cousins doesn't show up. It's like, okay, well, this has passed longer. It's almost like he goes, well, this is longer, and I'm usually the game's usually over at 4:30, but okay. Or do we have to play in January? Okay, well, all right. I just guess I'll show up. Oh, bam, two interceptions. There we go. I mean, I'm not trying to rag on the guy or anything, but that's just so far in the body of his career is what Kirk Cousins has done. And like you said, Mac, a Super Bowl championship to Minnesota means a lot more than people would imagine. Not only because Minnesota gets back to gets the championship finally, but like you said, that $84 million contract. It's like it fully justifies the Vikings now for giving him that money because hey, they could be like we saw that he was good enough to lead this team, that he could manage this team to a championship, and he did it. You know,
Yeah, it would mean a lot to them, and I mean, if they by some miracle pull it off, I mean, kudos to them.
yeah.
But still, I, you can't knock the move then. I mean, everybody's going to look like the biggest idiot in the room, and the Vikings are going to be sitting there with a shit-eating grin, going, "Oh, we're smarter than everyone else."
You
And
can't say nothing about the $84 million anymore, Keith.
yeah, which would take away like half of Keith's content.
In all honesty, I think the Super Bowl meant more to the fans than it would to the actual team, just because the Vikings fans, are probably the most tortured fans in the NFL. I mean, if we're just being completely honest. I mean, earlier Max was talking about how it's been 50 years since the Chiefs won a Super Bowl. Who the Chiefs beat in that Super Bowl? The Minnesota Vikings. So they don't have a single ring
Mm-hmm.
in their existence, anything like that. They wasted Randy Moss and Chris Carter back in the '90s. I mean, they've squandered every opportunity they had, and now, yeah, now that they paid Kirk Cousins $84 million, it's like you bring him in, he better be the guy. I think everyone knew before that he wasn't really the guy, but that would just it would vindicate the team, and it would honestly give the fans a whole lot of relief and finally give them a ring they've been searching for 60 plus years.
You would think they're more tortured than Browns and Lions fans?
Throughout history, maybe the Lions are up there, but Browns fans, it's like you've had an awful last 20 years, but oh well, you lost your team for a bit. You didn't have to suffer throughout
Yeah,
the few years the team moved to Baltimore.
I'm pretty sure Richard would say differently.
nobody cares
Speaking
what
of
Richard
that,
thinks.
uh, Speaking of Baltimore, though, I thank you for the segue there, Jerry. Um, the Ravens. I mean, Lamar Jackson. I'll admit it. Okay, I was wrong. Back when we sat there, we were talking about the Baltimore Ravens for the season. I said that I did not believe it, and boy, am I wrong. And I'm here. I'm man enough to admit I was completely wrong about the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, they are the number one team in the AFC. They've beaten almost all the contenders. Only Kansas City is basically of the contenders that are in the playoffs. Kansas City is the only one that's beaten them. And Jerry, what would it mean to the Ravens if they win the Super Bowl?
yeah, I mean, for starters, it would end the 20-year drought of no MVPs winning a Super Bowl. The last one to do it was Kurt Warner back in '99. So Jackson winning it this year would finally put to rest that at least that curse, quote unquote. It would get the MVP of the league another Super Bowl because if we're being honest, he's winning it. He's going to run away with it like Mahomes ran away with it last year.
Oh yeah.
It's like Russ had a shot,
Hmm.
but he squandered it. So it would end that drought, and then, in all honesty, it would establish Lamar Jackson as more than just a 1 year wonder in the AFC. It would establish him as the probably the second best QB in the AFC behind Mahomes, if I'm being completely honest. Just because of how
And
talented he's
also,
been this year, his legs are dynamic. His passing, it's improved immensely from where it was last year. It's like last year he could barely hit the broadside of a barn, and now he can at least hit the broadside of a barn consistently. So I mean,
I was about to say it would put to bed also that Lamar Jackson is a running back talk that some of us like to joke about. But keep
hey,
going.
Lamar Jackson's a running back, and Josh Allen is a tight end. For being honest. But yeah, it would end a lot of that talk of people saying he's not built to be a QB. It's like if he's not built to be a QB, then what's the rest of the league letting a running back win a Super Bowl playing QB? It's like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Well, starting off this season, I was sitting there thinking, Lamar Jackson can be something good. I didn't think he was going to be something special. Um, it's nice to see his career blossom from going into the draft, and everybody's like, I don't think he'll be a good QB. He'll be a great wide receiver. Let's move him over to the wide receiver. And I was sitting there like, just let the kid play. Just let him play quarterback, and let's see what happens. Last year he did okay. I mean, he did have a lot of competitive close games. That game versus the Chiefs in week
Second week of
12
December,
last year?
December 9th,
Uh,
I believe it was, where Mahomes had that crazy rollout
December
to
9th.
Tyreek on the fourth and like 16 to get that first down to kick the game-winning field goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and we went to the AFC Championship game and we were a offside call away from the Super Bowl, and they took us to the wire with him at the helm. And I was sitting there thinking last offseason, I was like, if he just kind of develops a little bit as far as passing wise, he could be insanely good and a scary quarterback to face. And boy, did he ever develop. I mean, that second year jump for him was just phenomenal. I mean, the guy has literally turned it to another level, and it's great to see because I was sitting there thinking, well, it's going to be, a Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, AFC. not the case. It's Lamar Jackson's firmly inserted himself into that conversation where it's going to be those three quarterbacks, and then maybe throw in Josh Allen for the next decade, where we're going to be sitting here going, well, it's going to be one of these four quarterbacks that's going to go to the Super Bowl every year for the AFC, and it means a lot to Lamar Jackson. It's going to prove the doubters wrong, and he's firmly going to assert himself as a quarterback in the NFL. He already has with the MVP season that he had, and if he wins the Super Bowl, it's going to make a lot of teams afraid of the Ravens for many years to come.
And to jump on your point about that second year as well. I mean, because as we all know, most of the time with quarterbacks, that sophomore slope hits, and it's like, is he just a 1-year wonder? Is this what we really have? And then you have the ones like me that says give him next year to see where he's really at. Well, okay, his sophomore year, it's like, the hell, he's better than he was last year. What the hell's gonna happen next year now? Because I mean,
yeah. No, I'm with you. You can't really fathom what will happen next year with the way that this year has gone. It's just at this point, it's just sugar on top. Whatever he does next
the
year.
one thing about Lamar is he is a winner. He's been a winner since he stepped into the NFL. He is 19-3. Two of those three losses have come against the Chiefs. So I mean, he just knows how to win. He knows how to He knows how to at least manage his offense good enough to get the team a win. And the only other team they lost to was Cleveland, and that's a division game. And division games are usually complete crapshoots, if we're being honest there. So I mean, I don't really put a whole lot of stock into that loss. And I mean, the loss against Kansas City, that came week 3 of the season. Both teams are completely different teams than they were then. The Chiefs weren't healthy then. The defense is completely different than where it was back when Baltimore visited Kansas City. So I think if we do get that AFC Championship matchup, which a lot of people think we will, it'll be two basically new teams than if you go back and watch the film from what we saw week 3. Just to be on that topic. And the next thing is Lamar's only 22. It's like that's ridiculous. It's like he's going to win an MVP younger than Joe Burrow won the Heisman. Just let that sink in.
Speaking of Joe Burrow, that's going to be a topic for another episode. But
I just find that ridiculous that he's just that young, and he's being that successful.
Welcome to the new NFL.
Yeah.
I mean that's essentially what their whole thing is, turning more and more into like the NBA type, where they get these ultra young guys in and they just come in and dominate. Because I feel like for a long time we had kind of a stale, almost a stale decade for getting new quarterbacks in the NFL. And now we've got Lamar Jackson coming in and dominating. We've got Patrick Mahomes coming in and dominating. We've got Deshaun Watson coming in and dominating. Josh Allen's turning it on, and that's just the AFC. I mean, it's kind of like a quarterback renaissance right now, and it's fun to watch.
Now that you mentioned Josh Allen, let's move on to the Buffalo Bills.
That's your tight end himself.
All right, let's just. What would it mean though, Jerry, to them if they can finally bring home that Super Bowl championship?
So there's two things I got here. One, it avenges the 4 falls of Buffalo that happened in the 90s, where they went to 4 straight Super Bowls and they lost all 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
It gives a little vindication to their fan base about what happened there. And the second one that I have,
good times.
Yeah, the second one I have is it cements Sean McDermott as probably the most underrated coach in the NFL. I mean, you don't ever hear people talking about him. He deserves to be in the Coach of the Year conversation this year, but nobody's talking about him. Everybody's talking about Kyle Shanahan. Everybody's talking about John Harbaugh. Those are the 2 people everyone's talking about, but he deserves to be in that conversation. He's probably one of the better young coaches in the league, and he honestly has a chance to run the AFC East once Hoodie and Brady are retired, he has a chance where he can run that AFC East with Josh Allen and that defense because that defense is phenomenal as well. It's like that team overall, they're just very good. I've been a huge fan of Josh Allen since before he came out of the draft. I had him. I think it was the. I think it was third QB in that draft behind Darnold and my huge whiff that year, Josh Rosen. But I always thought he had the potential to be a great QB just because of his physical makeup. And honestly, he's starting to turn into a good QB. He just needs to sharpen up some of his accuracy issues. He even with this big arm, he's like the worst deep ball thrower in the NFL, believe it or not. And if he can sharpen that stuff up, Buffalo has a chance to be good for years. And if they can win a Super Bowl now with Josh Allen at that level, just imagine what they could be in a few years once he's developed his accuracy a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I mean, he kind of reminds me of like a Ben Roethlisberger in the way that he plays. He doesn't shy away from those big hits. I mean, he's a big quarterback because he's built like a tight end, and he definitely knows how to sling the ball all over the yard. So, I mean, you're completely right. I mean, there's not really much I can add to what you said, Jerry, about what it would mean to Buffalo. I mean, plus, what it would mean to me to watch Buffalo win is that I'll get to see Bills Mafia do some crazy shit at their parade, and I would thoroughly enjoy that. That's just good times.
Maybe they'll light some
for
tables
everyone.
on fire and start jumping through them instead of just regular tables.
Ooh, next level shit.
All I could add is, it would actually make me feel better too if they win the Super Bowl because, hey, that tight end whooped our ass on Thanksgiving in the Super Bowl season. So, hey. But let's move on to their opponent, the Houston Texans. And as you guys know, we've interacted with a lot of Houston Texans fans over these past couple of years. But what would it mean to that team if they can finally bring home the championship themselves, Max?
Well, it would mean that suffering through the David Carr era, the Case Keenum era, all these other crap quarterback
The Brock
eras ever
Osweiler
since their
era.
inception. Yeah, the Osweiler contract and era, however short that may have been, it would take a load off of their mind because they've kind of got the Houston Texan fans have kind of like the short man syndrome, and they think that every other franchise is looking down upon them, which we're really not. I mean, I respect the Texans in the way that they play. They're a good team. It's just they've suffered through so much in their short history as an NFL franchise that it would mean so much to those fans getting a Super Bowl win, and it would also vindicate Deshaun Watson because there was a lot of questions surrounding whether or not he could be a quarterback to lead an NFL franchise, and he kind of was the first one to dispel that notion that a quarterback that can run and be mobile and throw the ball could play in the NFL or wouldn't be able to play in the NFL or wouldn't be able to translate into the NFL. It was him and then Lamar Jackson both solidified that notion because essentially all we've had before that was Michael Vick, and they've kind of taken that torch and ran with it. No pun intended on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, go ahead, Max.
And go. That was
Yeah,
pretty
so
much
the
it. You
one
go ahead,
thing
Jerry.
that I know it would get off the back is we've actually been joking about this throughout the week. Is the Texans, they always get the afternoon slot on ESPN on Saturday. They always get that on Wild Card Weekend. So I think it would get that monkey off their back if they can win the Super Bowl because obviously they'd get that game and actually win and not get blown out. But I mean, if you
33 to nothing. Yeah, 30 to nothing, and then what was the other one where they just got absolutely dominated?
The Colts beat them 21-7 last year, and then their three playoff wins in team history are twice against the Bengals in the early 2010s, and against the Raiders after they had just locked Derek Carr for the year. So if you look at it, they haven't really done a whole lot. I mean, it's like they beat the Bengals twice, the Raiders twice. They need a run to finally vindicate themselves and just finally get the monkey off their back that they've been trying to get off their back since the first time they made the playoffs back in 2011. So they just have that on their back. It would give Deshaun Watson a little bit more vindication. Everybody has these injury concerns about him, myself included, with his 3 knee injuries. I mean, I don't know how long that'll hold up, but if they can find a way to make it work, that's great. Provides vindication for them trading away their draft picks for Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills. It would just do a lot of vindication that they rightfully need.
By the way, those 2 moves were the most head-scratching moves I've ever seen. Didn't like either one of those. I feel like they gave up way too much for Tunsil and Stills. So, I mean, I guess you got to kind of pay a premium when you're trying to win, but I think that could hamper them in the future. I mean, this might be their one shot to really go out there and try to dominate and win a Super Bowl. Past that, with trading away what they did, it could hamper them for the next 3 to 5 years.
Why does the NFL hate us and put us on Saturday afternoons all the time?
Because they make trades for Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills.
Oh, my.
And because they win the AFC South.
Yeah.
Oh.
The most clusterfuck of a division.
Oh. But, all right, let's speaking of cluster, what's of a division. Let's go to the NFC East champion Philadelphia Eagles. All right. Basically, after week 13, everybody had to get in the water at 5-7, and they just proceeded to go on and win the next 4 games, catch the Dallas Cowboys, and take the division. Jerry, what would it mean for them if they could win 2 in 3 years?
Well, it would give those rowdy Eagle fans another Super Bowl, obviously. I'm sure that brings you a lot of pain, Eric. But I think one thing that it would really do is it would get Carson Wentz out of that media shadow of saying he's not Nick Foles. He can't do what Nick Foles did because Nick Foles stepped in and won that Super Bowl after he got hurt. It would give Carson Wentz vindication as well as the team's vindication as well as sticking with Carson Wentz over Nick Foles, which after seeing how Nick Foles was playing in Jacksonville, Philadelphia 100% made the correct decision keeping Carson Wentz over Nick Foles. And, I mean, with all the injuries they have, I think it just speaks to a testament that Doug Peterson's a much better coach than a lot of people give him credit for. They dealt with injury after injury after injury after injury this year, including down the stretch, and they just found a way to scrape their way in and make it through against all odds, especially after that 5-7 where myself included, I counted them dead in the water. It's like I didn't think they had it.
Whoa. What was it, like 10 of their opening day starters on IR by the time they got to the Week 16
yeah, something
game?
ridiculous like that. It's like I know Week 16 they didn't have a single starter at skill position playing that week after Ertz went out. It's like their number 1 wide receiver is Greg Ward, who is their 5th receiver. They were on their 3rd string running back because Miles Sanders was hurt that game. It's like it was just ridiculous, and they still found a way to make the playoffs. I just think that's a remarkable coaching feat on a man who's just been drugged through the mud just consistently outside of that one Super Bowl year.
And see, that's the thing. I think the Super Bowl would mean the most to Doug Peterson. I mean, damn, I'm still going like Pat Summerall used to do back in '98. Doug Peterson, because like you said, that Super Bowl that they won, you still have plenty of people like, oh, it's a fluke, New England should have took it, or Atlanta should have won that game and whatnot, and this basically, like you said, it validates him as a damn good coach because, I mean, he's out there right now with basically practice squad guys, and they're going to be playing a playoff game with practice squad guys. So, I mean, that's just a testament to his coaching alone, is that fact that he was able to get in their last 4 wins when they were 5-7, lead them to the play. Even if they win or lose, Philadelphia are big winners this season because, to me, they found a lot of depth going forward. And it's just, Max, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking that we're talking about Doug Peterson's coaching legacy, and all I can think about is Andy Reid, because look at what look at the way we look at Andy Reid, going, hey, he's a offensive genius, and he's considered one of the top 7, 8 coaches of all time. I know his wins are up
I
there,
think he's
top
six all
5,
time
I
at the
think
moment.
now, 6 all time. So we look at the way we look at Andy Reid, and look at the way we look at Doug Peterson. Now, those two have a history together. Doug Peterson was a QB for him, a QB coach, an
Yep.
offensive coordinator, all under Andy Reid. So essentially, the way I'm looking at it is it would almost kind of tarnish Andy Reid's legacy as a head coach, but it would elevate him as one of the best coaching prospect developers ever in the NFL, because his coaching tree is one of the biggest and most successful over the last 20 years. And coming from a guy that could never win the big one to sending off head coaching prospects to other teams and then them going in and winning Super Bowls is just a testament to how Andy Reid coaches up his coaching and makes winners out of everyone that's ever been on his staff. I mean, what do we got? John Harbaugh, Doug Peterson,
Yep.
Sean
That's
McDermott,
3 in the playoffs right there.
who, yeah, three of his coaching proteges are in the playoffs currently. One's already won a Super Bowl,
Yeah.
or two has already won a Super Bowl, and then he's got numerous other ones throughout the NFL that were either on the cusp of winning a Super Bowl or making it into the playoffs this year. I mean, it would just be a testament to Andy Reid in the way that he develops coaches in the
Riverboat.
NFL.
Yeah, Riverboat
But it
Ron's
would
a
also
part of
be a
that
knock
too. So
on him.
another coach has been to a Super Bowl as well.
Yeah, Riverboat Ron. I think last year there was a
8.
stat that there were
Yeah, there was 8 last year,
eight coaches.
and I think I'm pretty sure they were
in the
counting Sherman,
NFL.
who got fired, but Bieniemy is probably about to become a head coach again, so that's going to bump that number back up to 8. That's 1/4 of the league right there that are Andy Reid proteges.
Yeah, which is phenomenal. And relating that back to the Eagles, it would just be vindication for Doug Peterson. I think he could almost solidify himself as one of the best coaches in the NFL throughout its history if he can take this team and win the Super Bowl. Because he's done it with Nick Foles as a backup. Then he could do it with a depleted team. And Carson Wentz, a completely different quarterback than what he had going into the Super Bowl when they won it a couple of years ago. So, I mean, it would just solidify him as one of the greatest coaches next to, let's say, pretty much Bill Belichick.
You got Belichick,
Some
you
of
got
the other
Curly
ones would
Lambeau,
be like,
Bill Walsh,
and
yeah,
Lombardi, and then
Yeah.
what, Chuck Noll
I
back in the
think
day.
that right there are all the coaches
So
that are ahead of
it-
him wins too.
Yeah, so I mean, you can almost put Doug Peterson up there with them if he can pull off that feat this year with a Super Bowl win with the team that he has. So that's kind of where I'm at with him.
All right, let's move. And I'm going to put these two teams together because basically, for a good portion of the last decade, and it seems like going forward that these two are going to be linked together once again. But Seattle and San Francisco. What would it mean towards either of those teams if they were able to take home the Lombardi Trophy? Jerry?
So the one thing, I'll start with the Niners here. The first thing it would do is it would give the Niners their 6th ring. It would put them up there with the Patriots and the Steelers at 6. Start their stairway to 7 like the Steelers have had going since 2008 and what New England just started this past season. It would put them in that category.
Thanks for cueing on the depression, buddy.
Yeah, it would do that. And then I think the biggest vindication it would give is it would prove Jimmy Garoppolo is not another cast-off New England QB like a Matt Castle, where he just goes where he gets traded somewhere else and then he just fails. It would prove that he is a legit QB like most people think he is, as well as it just puts back those glory days that Jim Harbaugh couldn't establish back in the early 2010s, and it proves Kyle Shanahan is the coach that everyone thought he could be whenever he got hired on with the Niners.
Mm-hmm.
And the main thing I take out of it with the Seahawks is they have the potential to give Marshawn Lynch a Jerome Bettis send off, where they just run through the playoffs with him and give him a send off in the Super Bowl. And I just think that'd be very cool. And I think that'd be a great thing for them to get out of this playoff run, and if they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. So for me, one thing I got to say is I called it at the beginning of the year. The 49ers were going to just come out and shock the NFL. And I'm really happy that I predicted that because everybody else was like, no, they'll be a mediocre team at best. So I just wanted to get that one out of the way. But for the 49ers, one, I think it would solidify Lynch as one of the better GMs in the NFL from all the moves that he's made and all the decisions to get Garoppolo, to trade for D Ford, get all these different draft picks, get Bosa,
Don't forget robbing the Bears.
do all that. I mean, the guy is, yeah,
Robbing the Bears.
Yeah, so I mean, one, it would solidify him as one of the best GMs in the NFL. Two, it would solidify Shanahan as one of the better coaches in the NFL and one of the better offensive mind coaches in the NFL. And three, it would vindicate Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, there's always been questions surrounding him, like you said, because he was a cast-off New England quarterback, and that would just prove that he wasn't just another one of those Castle-esque like players. So there's three people's reputations on the line and at stake for that team. And the other thing is Shanahan's trying to live up to his father's, legacy. So it would be really interesting to see them win because there's so many different little intricacies that play into that team and the personalities on that team that are running it. I mean, they're kind of running their team a little bit different and coming at it with a different approach than what the rest of the NFL has done over the last, 20 years. So it'd be really interesting to see them win, and they might change the culture and the look of the NFL for a couple of years to come if they can do it. And then with the Seahawks, essentially if Russell Wilson wins another Super Bowl, man, that puts them up there with, a Manning, a Brady, a Montana, an Elway, guys like that. I mean, and you can't overlook the accomplishments that he's had. And it also solidifies Carroll as one of the best coaches of all time. I mean, there's a lot of these playoff teams have a lot of reputation in solidifying them as some of the greatest in their particular field of all time. So there's a lot of storylines that play out that way in the NFL, and it would be interesting to see any one of these things happen, but it'd be vindication for Carroll because he did excellent in college, and then he came into the NFL and just turned this Seahawks team into a perennial contender and used Russell Wilson and used him properly. So it'd be interesting to see. I don't know what it would mean to the fans. I mean, it would just be another Super Bowl for them, another playoff run for them, another win for them. So I think they might be a little bit more accustomed to it versus some of these other teams that haven't had playoff success or a Super Bowl win in the last 20 years. So that's kind of where I'm at with those guys.
So those bandwagon fans immediately can go back in their closet and pull out their 12 stuff. Like, glad I didn't throw this away. Yeah, I'm one of the 12s. Go Seattle.
They were just getting ready to donate all that.
But, getting ready to donate it. But also along the lines of Seattle, Max, it's to me, it's the fact that Carroll and Wilson would be able to do it this time without that defense like they had first time they won a championship back in 48. Because, once again, I didn't think that they'd be this good this year, basically because, I was right about that defense. I said that defense is going to be more of a weakness than a strength. And that's proven to be true for the most part. But somehow, Russell Wilson just finds ways to win once again. And here they are back in the playoffs once again. But now the thing is, the playoffs are a different animal. Will that? Because don't get me wrong, teams have won Super Bowls before with terrible defenses. But can Seattle do it? And I guess we'll see.
Yeah, you can never count Russell Wilson out at this point.
Nope.
The guy is he's an improviser. The guy, even if it looks like he is about to go down, you have to wait until that whistle blows in order for it to be over, because that guy he just makes magic happen. And if you don't see that, you're not watching closely enough. So he's a great quarterback. Any team would be lucky to have him, and any fan base would be lucky to have a quarterback like him. Nothing. You can't ever count them out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them.
And now, let's talk about the last team that we haven't mentioned yet in the playoffs, the Tennessee Titans. Don't get me wrong. As you know, I predicted Tennessee to actually do good things and make the playoffs this year. I just didn't predict them to do it with Ryan Tannehill, though, I thought that Marcus Mariota would be the guy that leads them to the... But Vrabel benches Mariota in the Denver game, and boy, did Tannehill prove to him that was the right decision. Because here they are. After those games with Mariota, it's like... I was, especially with y'all know, that I was like, what the... This team is supposed to be winning the AFC South right now. Why are they... But once he benched Mariota, put Tannehill in there, Tannehill comes in, and he just sits there, and he takes... basically, he's good enough to lead the team to the playoffs and, play basically mistake-free football for the most part. And, Jerry... What would it mean to the Titans? What would it mean to Vrabel? And where did Tannehill come from?
So where I start at first is Kevin Dyson can finally stop having nightmares about Super Bowl 34 coming 1 yard short. Try to stop having those nightmares that he's probably been having for years. And then the next thing, Mike Vrabel, he's a coach. A lot of people doubted him whenever Tennessee hired him from Houston. It's like, why are they hiring this guy? He's not ready to be a head coach. And boy, has he proved everyone wrong. I forget if he made the playoffs before this year, but Vrabel, I liked him whenever Tennessee hired him. I thought it was a home run hire. He's proven me right. He's finally getting to move on from the previous head coaching regimes, QB and Mariota, and he's proving that Ryan Tannehill, he has a lot of talent that a lot of people counted him out. He had a lot of potential coming out of Texas A&M, and him and his coaches are finally tapping into that Miami for some reason couldn't tap into. I think a lot of that was on Adam Gase, but Miami just couldn't tap into Ryan Tannehill, and Vrabel has found a way, and Tannehill has that offense rolling like no other.
Yeah.
Well, heck, I saw a stat just a little bit ago, and the Titans have averaged 33.4 points a game since Week 10. That's up there with some of the greatest offenses of all time. I think the Chiefs last year were averaging, 36 for the season? And the greatest show on turf was averaging 37. So that's only a couple points away per game, away from some of the greatest offenses of all time. Those guys are clicking on all cylinders. They're the team that I worry about the most in the playoffs on the AFC side, as far as being a Chiefs fan, because they've got a great defense, they've got a great running back, and Tannehill is playing like a man on a mission, trying to prove all the doubters wrong. Trying to prove all this. Well, can he really be a quarterback in the NFL after all those years in Miami, where it was just a bunch of turmoil there? And you're right, Gase was probably the one that ruined that opportunity to tap into that potential that he has. So it's crazy to sit here and think that it's a Ryan Tannehill led Titans team instead of a Marcus Mariota led team, because I honestly had high hopes for Marcus Mariota coming into the league, and over the last couple of years, it just seems like there's something mentally, a mental block for him, because he has the tools, he has the skills, he has the abilities to be a quarterback in the NFL. It's just there's something not right upstairs, and he's not performing the way that everyone expects him to perform. So for that QB change to happen in the season like it did, and then a quarterback like Ryan Tannehill to come in, holy cow. They're going to be one of those teams that's going to shock people in the playoffs. And I wouldn't be surprised if they beat the Patriots. I mean, honestly, that's where I'm at with them. They could beat the Patriots and then go on a massive run in the playoffs and go into the Super Bowl as the hottest team in the AFC and pretty much take on anyone, because if they beat the Patriots, they've got to go they've got to go to Baltimore, and if they beat Baltimore,
Then they got to go to KC or
I mean,
or whoever is the 3 through 5 seed that advances, or I guess 4 through 5 seed, because we're eliminating New England, and go to there and beat them as well. So it has to either go to Kansas City, Buffalo,
yeah.
or Houston.
For the sake of the argument, let's go. They go to Baltimore and beat Baltimore. So they beat two of the best teams in the NFL, or in the AFC side. And then they come into Kansas City. They've already beat us once this year. Who's to say they won't beat us again in the AFC Championship game? And that would be a battle-tested team going into the Super Bowl. And it would be scary to see what they do to any one of the NFC teams, whoever it may be. I think it might be the Saints, or it might be the 49ers going into the Super Bowl. And they're going to have a tough test on their hands with the Titans. And I think seeing Ryan Tannehill win a Super Bowl would be very odd as an NFL fan, but also very satisfying at the same time, because it's kind of like one of those, just comeback stories that everybody likes. And it would almost be like damn near a made for a movie, So it'd be interesting to see. It would mean a lot to the Tennessee fans. It would mean a lot to everyone. But the thing it means most to is Ryan Tannehill, in my opinion.
You guys want to hear some interesting Tannehill stats?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay. This season alone, Tannehill has played 5 teams, though, that have had subpar pass defenses that I've counted as 20th or below. Saints, Texans, twice, the Raiders, Colts, Buccaneers, okay? They played against 2 teams that have had middle-of-the-pack defenses, 11th through 19th, Panthers and the Jaguars. They played 2 games against teams that have top 5 defenses, Chargers and y'all's Chiefs, okay? Now, if you take away the Denver game, because I don't count that game against him because, he came in relief, okay? Tannehill has completed 69.6% of his passes for 22 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, and is throwing for 259 yards a game. Okay, that's how much he's torn it up basically since he's been in. Which, for a team like Tennessee that has a very good defense, a great running attack, that's basically what you're asking for.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to see what he's done this year. I mean, coupling that with what the rest of the team is, they are a complete team if this is the true Ryan Tannehill. I mean, it's scary. Derrick Henry's 6'3" and 250 pounds?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Try stopping that freight train. I mean, the dude is cut. He will just run right over you like he does everybody else, and that defense is going to snuff you out. I mean, they are a scary team, just plain and simple. I mean, they're more scary than the Ravens. We know what the Ravens are. The thing is we don't know what Ryan Tannehill is, and couple that with the rest of the team, holy cow. Scary, scary, scary team.
But here's the thing also, though, now. Tannehill has played 6 games against the Patriots in Foxborough, okay? He's never won any of those games. He's lost 28-0, 27-17, 41-13, 36-7, 31-20, 31-24, and 38-7. Now, if this game was in Tennessee, I'd agree with you, Keith, and Jerry, and say, hey, Tennessee's going to win this game. Because away playing against New England away from Foxborough, he's 4-1. But he's 0-6 when he goes into Foxborough. And I don't know if it's something about that stadium that throws him off. I don't know if it's something that Belichick realizes about him playing in Foxborough. But as I told you guys throughout the week, I just can't pick Tennessee because, Belichick to me is a master of, especially in the playoffs, finding a team's weakness and saying, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us this way. I mean, because New England, as we know, can stuff the run. New England's also the second-rate pass defense. But I'm thinking Belichick saying, hey, Tannehill, I don't think you're good enough to beat us. You've been having a good half year. Because listen to this also. He's all in those 6 games, he's averaged 11.3 points per game. He's averaged 24 of 39 for 260 yards. He's only thrown 5 touchdowns but 10 interceptions. He's had 3 games against New England and Foxborough with no touchdowns also. And he's had a fumble in every last game that he's played there.
Those stats are very telling, but I think you throw those stats out because that was with him on the Dolphins.
Sure, right.
That was all with him on the Dolphins. And we know how much of a dumpster fire that team's been over the last, 15 years? I mean, I don't really think we can take those stats of him on the Dolphins and apply that to him on the Titans because it's a rejuvenated Ryan Tannehill. I mean, the guy has found new life on the Titans and playing like a man on a mission. And couple that with the defense and the running game and the wide receivers that he has, I don't think we can. It's comparing apples to oranges at this point. I don't think they play in the same way that a lot of people might think it does.
I mean, and you very well could be right. I mean, you could sit there, Tannehill could sit there, no fumbles, no interceptions, 3 touchdowns, 350 yards, and Tennessee rolls tonight. But the point I'm making is it's basically Belichick and Tannehill. And to me, Belichick can just, like I said, he can find that one thing. Even though, like you said, that was with him on the Dolphins. Tannehill's now on the Titans, which is leaps and bounds in almost any of those Dolphins teams he's had. But to me, it's the fact that Belichick can take that one thing that he feels like is your weakness, and he says, hey, if you're going to beat us, this is the way you got to beat us. And I think Belichick would rather have Tannehill throwing the ball to beat them than Derrick Henry running up and down the field to beat them. So we'll see. Go ahead.
You're right about that, but I don't think we're taking into consideration the Mike Vrabel effect on this as well.
Right.
Because Mike Vrabel is a protege of Bill Belichick. I mean, he played under Bill Belichick for, 8 years. That's 8 years of knowing Bill Belichick and how his mind works, because Bill Belichick was a defensive-minded coach. So you know that Vrabel is going to have that insight as far as what needs to be done to attack that defense. I know it's been quite a few years since he's been in that system and been under Bill Belichick, but at least he knows how his brain works and how his thought is. So there's that little X factor in there as well. And I think that's one of the things that we're not taking into consideration. Vrabel, in my opinion, is a damn good coach.
Oh, yes, he definitely is.
And knowing the Patriots and Bill Belichick and how they operate and how they think is an X factor in this game. I mean, you're right. Bill Belichick, greatest coach of all time. obviously he knows how to dismantle any team in a multitude of ways. But there's a lot of things that counteract that in this game, and that's why I still think Tannehill's going to go in and win. I don't think the Patriots are in a position this year to really go win it all. So I see it more as a proving game for Vrabel, for Tannehill, and all that stuff than anything. And I think they're going to play like they have nothing to lose. So that's where I'm at with this. I mean, sure, it could go either way, but I still think there's a lot of things coming up Titans on.
Which I got you another interesting Ryan Tannehill stat real quick. This one goes into my
I love
favorite analytical stats, as you guys know I like. So I got this from Ben Baldwin on Twitter. He's a Seahawks writer for The Athletic. And from what he found, he's a huge analytical guy. He found that Ryan Tannehill had a higher completion percentage over expectation, completion percentage over expectation plus EPA index. EPA is expected points added. A higher DVOA, higher PFF grade, higher success rate, and yards per attempt than Aaron Rodgers this year.
Man,
That's ridiculous.
that says a lot.
Yeah.
Well, heck, what was it? I think I was watching something on like Next Gen Stats, and the average window that he was throwing into was less than a yard. It was like 0.8 or like 8/10 of a yard on average to each one of his receivers. So he's fitting that ball in a really tight window. I mean, this guy, you're right. His stats are just off the charts right now.
All right, let's go from a quarterback in the team that is in the playoffs to a quarterback in the team that's sitting at home on the couch watching the playoffs. The Dallas Cowboys. All I'm going to ask you, Jerry, is what the hell happened?
Well, where do I start? There's a bunch of things that went wrong for him this year. I think where it starts at. I think it starts up at the Jones family. I know a lot of people, they won't point any fingers at them, but I think they are far too involved in the football operations of this team. If they weren't as involved as they are player personnel decision and everything like that, I think Jason Garrett probably would have been gone probably a couple years ago, whenever he should have been back, probably like 2017-ish. I mean, he had what, 2 playoff wins in his 10 years in Dallas, even though technically he's still employed, which hate to tell you, Eric, but that ESPN report that came out the other night, they jumped the gun. He's not officially gone yet. But I mean, that's where everything starts, is those two. The power struggle that I've seen there, a lot of the struggles I've seen, it kind of reminds me of what David and Dan Glass did with the Royals in the mid-2000s, and kind of what Clark Hunt started doing whenever he first took over the team, whenever he ousted Carl Peterson. Back whenever that happened, he was just far too involved, and it was the detriment of the team. I think a lot of that's happening with Dallas right now. And then obviously the next issue is you got to look at Jason Garrett. You got to look at that man. He lost control of that locker room from early in the season after that 3-0 start, which they had a very relatively easy schedule to start with, so a lot of the coaching flaws were hidden. They almost lost to Miami, for Pete's sake. I mean, that should be telling. Miami, they eventually sharpened things up with Brian Flores, who I think is a rising coach in the league. But at that point, Miami was viewed as probably the worst team of all time, quote unquote, even though we all know they're not. But that's where the two main things start with me, is right there at ownership, how involved the Jones family is, and Jason Garrett.
Okay, Max, get your pot shots in.
Well, the Cowboys are just a trash organization, Eric. That's all I got to say. Damn it, I didn't get a reaction out of you. That's what I was hoping for. No, man, so aside from that one, I think they're it's kind of like going to the circus. I mean, you're expecting to see, a good show, and that's what they're putting on. I mean, it's a soap opera right now. It has been for the last 2 seasons. I mean, 3 seasons. I mean, you're the best one to key us in on this because you are a Cowboys fan, Eric. But hasn't the feeling been that Garrett shouldn't have been the coach for the last couple seasons? So having that loom over the organization isn't really healthy, and it makes you underperform because you're like, why should I perform for a coach that really isn't going to be here for the long term? And everybody knows that he's kind of a joke of a coach. Why perform? Why go out there and be motivated by this guy? And that's what a coach is. They're a motivator. They motivate you to go out there and fight for those extra yards, go make the game-winning play, do the little things that you may not want to do. And having kind of a lame duck coach for the last couple of years hasn't been helpful for that team. And we all know that Dak is a good quarterback. It pains me to say that because I mean, honestly, I didn't really think he was going to be a good quarterback, but this year's kind of proved that he is a good quarterback. And the way that the organizations run from the Joneses down, they're going to waste that talent that Dak has. And to see them still tiptoeing around the subject of keeping Garrett or getting rid of him is only hurting the team more and more every day. And they're falling behind more and more every day on the coaching search. And all these good coaches are going to be taken up pretty quick if they don't jump on it, get rid of Garrett, and start over. And Jones needs to kind of take a step back away from the team and allow the new coach to come in and create a culture within the franchise to take them to the next level. That's kind of where I see it going right now, or what I see happening with them.
How would you guys like some good stats about the Dallas Cowboys?
I love stats.
Are good stats, or are they like horrible stats
Well,
that make us smile and you sad?
well, I'll let you be the judge of that. All right, I'm gonna start off with some surface stats. All right, I want you to tell me if this is supposed to be a playoff team or is this supposed to be a team that's sitting at home. Offensively, first in total yards, third in the amount of first downs they got, second in third down percentage, second in sacks allowed, sixth in scoring, tied for ninth fewest giveaways. They were 14th in the amount of interceptions they threw, but they were tied for third in keeping the fumbles down. All right. Defensively, 10th in passing, 11th in rushing, 11th in scoring. They were 19th in sacks, 9th total defense. They had a tough time, though, at getting off the field. They're middle of the pack at 16th, 24th in penalty. They were 9th in penalties, second and third down percentage. They were 22nd in the amount of yards they give up, and they were 27th in takeaways, tied for 10th for fumbles, but tied for last in interceptions. And the turnover differential, tied for 18th at -1.
You also can't forget
So if I
you
get
also can't forget they have a higher point differential than the Seattle Seahawks, and they're the first team ever to have a top 10 offense and defense and postseason.
Exactly. Now let me give you a little bit of a deeper stat now. All right, Cowboys, they finished 8-8 in the year, right? Okay. Strength of victory is basically, how good was your competition that you beat, basically. All right. The Dallas Cowboys are 30th in the NFL in strength of victory. Only 2 teams are worse. I'll give you a guess.
New England and someone else.
No. Only 2 teams that were worse.
The Jets and Dolphins.
Try Cincinnati and the Giants.
Huh.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, that first set of stats that you gave us, that instantly tells me that they should have been a Super Bowl contender. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, those stats alone are what the Chiefs were hoping to be coming into this year, because we had a pretty much the best offense last year, and we had the 31st ranked defense. And all we were hoping for as Chiefs fans is a middle of the pack defense to get us over the hump and get us into the Super Bowl. So with those stats where they're a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, that should have instantly jettisoned them into the talks of being a Super Bowl contender. So what went wrong? Plain and simple. Coaching. It has to be that, because they had the skill, they had the stats, they had everything. They just couldn't mentally get past that roadblock.
That also, one of the staples that has also been the ability to at least win some of those come from behind games. They did absolutely none of that this year. It's like once they were down in the fourth quarter, they checked out. Like, no, we can't win this game. I mean, yeah, you had furious comebacks against the Packers and the Bears, but come on, that was in garbage time. Those teams were just trying to run the clock out and secure the W at that point when Dallas started coming back, I mean, because look at it like this. You had games against, here's my notes right here. Like you say, even though they went on to win 31-6, Jerry, at halftime, you didn't know they was going to win that game. I think they were only up, 10-6 at halftime? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, the New Orleans game, it's just like every time they were driving, they would shoot themselves in the foot with some turnover, fumble here, fumble there, And like you said, in the Jet game was clearly just a team that was unprepared to come and play. Yeah, once again, another furious fourth quarter comeback, but what did I mean? At the end of the day, it still go down to a loss. The Minnesota game, which, like you said, Max, comes to coaching. Okay, in that game, Prescott was rolling. Minnesota, they sat there, they had Zeke bottled up. Prescott was rolling. And that's the situation. Prescott rolling, Zeke bottled up. You're down by 4. You're inside your 20-yard line, and you're driving for the game-winning score. All right. What do you do in that situation? About 4th and 2, 4th and 3? What do you do in that situation?
100%.
Why not
go
for it?
They went for it, but now, all right, like I mentioned, Prescott was rolling. Zeke has been bottled up all night. What's your play call?
Put it in Dak's hands.
Slant over the middle.
Exactly. You keep that ball in Prescott's hands, right?
Yeah. You always put it in your quarterback's hands.
Well,
if your running back is bottled up.
Well, they decided to run it, and that cost them that game. I mean, don't get me wrong. That play by itself didn't cost them the game, but basically that decision
is what put the nail in the
prevented
coffin.
You from actually. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a chain reaction decision.
And I mean, you held the New England Patriots to 13 points. You guys, I'm pretty sure if y'all would have held New England to 13 points, y'all would be ecstatic, But, oh, yeah, we definitely won that game then, No, we lost 13-9 because, once again, of an ineffective kicker that we kept too long. All right? Buffalo just, like I said before, beats the hell out of us on Thanksgiving. It wasn't even respectable as the score would lead you to believe if you hadn't watched the game.
And Max's word, Buffalo waffle stomped them.
Yep, Buffalo, exactly. Waffle stomped us.
Yep, you're welcome for that, guys. Waffle stomp.
And then the final nail in the coffin for the season, the Week 16 game against Philadelphia. In the second half, they were, like I said, they got the ball, they were rolling, and all of a sudden, Pollard fumbles the ball. All right, but at no point in the second half did Philadelphia actually take the game and just put it away. The Cowboys had a shot the entire game, but they kept shooting themselves in the foot. And then let's not even talk about that the performance last week. Yeah, they won. They looked, and they won big, but what was the point at that point? The season was over.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge difference between Philadelphia's coaching and Dallas's coaching. It doesn't look like Philadelphia ever gave up on their head coach. They never gave up on Doug Peterson. It seems like the players had given up on Jason Garrett since like October.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, this year it just felt like they got coached out of wins instead of coached into wins, you know? Because it's like a lot of people said, at this point, this team had 12-4 talent, but 4-12 coaching. And look what they
Eight and
finished
eight.
at. Right in the middle at 8-8, you know?
And that's a lost locker room
Yep.
for you.
Yep.
Plain and simple.
Uh, well, but now,
I can hear the sadness in your sigh.
but speaking of one coach that's gone, let's move on to some other coaching changes in the NFL. Um, Ron Rivera is now head coach of Washington. Kitchens is out in Cleveland. Um, Shermer is out in New York.
Obviously, Rivera's out in Carolina.
Oh yeah, he's out in Carolina since he's now heading in Washington. But Max, give me your thoughts on the coaching changes that has occurred so far.
Ron Rivera leaving Carolina was a good decision. I don't think that organization was the best fit for him. I think the Redskins would actually be a pretty darn decent fit for him. I think that was a smart move by the Potato Skins there. And there's also the talk of whether or not Alex Smith is going to come back healthy or not, or if he comes back at all. And if there's a possibility to get Alex Smith matched up with Ron Rivera and that team, I think there's a possibility that they could turn that franchise around and win some games, possibly maybe sneak into the playoffs. Because that division, as it sits currently, is so up in the air. I mean, as we just talked about the Cowboys and their turmoil, the Eagles kind of being hit and miss, and with all the injuries, they're pretty much the standard bearer for that division at this point. And then you've got the Giants.
The Giants
are kind of, yeah, I mean, a ship without a captain at this point. I mean, honestly, that was a good decision to get Ron Rivera. I think he can turn that team around, and pairing up a Andy Reid protege with Alex Smith is a good match. There's not a lot I can say good about the Skins at this point, other than I think they're making the right decisions. It's a matter of whether or not Dan Snyder gets out of the way and allows his coach and GM to come in and do what's necessary to turn the franchise around. The other one that I'm really intrigued by is the firing of Freddie Kitchens. I think that was the smartest decision that they could have made.
After the dumbest decision they made by hiring him.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was dumb. Good thing it was only 1 year, because honestly, if you gave that team a good, strong coach, they could do something. I mean, they have the talent. I know a lot of people are knocking Baker Mayfield, but I think with the right coach, he could be, in the talks of being one of the better quarterbacks in the AFC, behind, Allen, behind Watson, behind Mahomes, and behind Jackson. I think he could be, 6th or 7th up there in the AFC as far as, quarterback talent. So putting a good, strong coach with that team essentially could make them one of the better teams in the AFC. And them getting rid of John Dorsey, I think, is another good indication that they want to turn that franchise around. Yes, Dorsey's a great talent evaluator, but he also hampers an organization with some of the financial decisions that he makes. So it was good to see them kind of just go, you know what, we're going to start fresh again. This 2-year experiment with John Dorsey's over with, and the 1-year experiment with Freddie Kitchens is over with. Let's see what we can do starting fresh. So I think they're making the right moves. It's a matter of whether or not they make the right decision with who they replace those two with. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then the Giants getting rid of Shermer, I'm not sure I like that. I think they should have given Shermer another shot. I don't think what he was given quarterback wise was really helpful. I'm not sure Daniel Jones is the answer for the future. And we all know Eli Manning is way past his prime. So I don't think that organization made the right decision in getting rid of Shermer. I think they did it a year or two too soon. Um, so that's kind of where I'm at with the coaching decisions and coaching changes at this point.
And Jerry, I'm gonna break you in a second, but let me back up to the point about the Redskins, though. And I have to disagree with you there only for one point. Remember at the point last year, and this Washington team and that Washington team weren't too different, in my opinion, from each other because I mean Washington about what was about week 10, 11 last year before Alex Smith that basically fractured his leg in half. They were leading the NFC East,
Yeah.
and I mean they were rolling. And I think if Alex Smith stayed healthy, Washington basically wins the division that year, and they come back this year, and Washington also probably is a strong contender to win the NFC East this year. But also, I don't think Alex Smith is going to be the quarterback going forward because Dwayne Haskins has shown you so far that, hey, give me a chance and we can make things happen. I mean, yeah, they're only, 4-12, but still. At least, the kid's learning, he's growing, and he's giving you reason for optimism. And I don't see how you can just, barring injury, of course, and nobody hopes for that, but barring injury, I don't see how you could turn away from him at the start of next year.
Yeah, I think Haskins is
I
honestly
do.
a good. I think he's going to be a good QB in the league. I think I think if Rivera can keep on O'Connell and Washington, he can keep the development that they had going with him, and they can potentially make him a decent QB, and they could be a pretty dangerous team next year if Haskins can do essentially what Alex Smith was doing back in
Yep,
2018, just manage the game and don't make too many mistakes.
because to me, Washington going forward, and for let's just say the next 3 years, Washington to me is the most dangerous team to look at in the NFC East.
Yeah, with that rookie contract to Haskins.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because you got a new head coach that's proven. You got like you said, Jerry, a rookie quarterback, which allows you to take that money and put it in other places. And Washington actually has a decent defense. I mean, injuries, raveled that team as well this year. But if you put their pieces together for the most part, they have a decent defense. And in my opinion, they're either drafting Thomas or they're drafting Young. Okay. So either they're going to have that explosive piece on the defensive side, on the D line, or they're going to have that tackle on the O line that basically solidifies the line once again. Now that Trent Williams is for the most likely gone. So,
Well, that's the interesting thing about
and
Trent
then
Williams
there's
is they just fired their head trainer the other day after 17 years. That's the person that Trent Williams had a lot of grief with in Washington. They fired
right,
whatever his name was, team president Bruce Allen. They fired him,
Bruce Allen. Yeah,
and then they fired Jake Gruden. They fired pretty much everyone Trent Williams had issues with in Washington. I could see Ron Rivera having a sit down conversation, convincing Trent Williams to come back.
And we all know Rivera is a player's coach, so I think that would definitely help that situation. I see them going defense with their
Yeah, I
first
think he's gonna
pick.
be young at two.
I mean,
I think he's just too good of a prospect to
yeah,
pass up on.
yeah, yeah. You can't pass up on that. So, and pairing him with Haskins,
Yeah,
they're good old buddies. So, I mean, it's a no brainer. I think they're making the right decisions. Um, I'm just not sold on Haskins yet. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my particular love for Alex Smith and the hope that he could possibly come back. Um, I'm just not sure yet. But I could see Haskins turning into a good quarterback, especially under Ron Rivera. Look what he did with Cam Newton. So I think he could do it with Haskins as well. But I think if you want them to compete next year, Alex Smith might be the answer if he can come back from
yeah,
that injury.
yeah. I mean, Smith, he's 35. I mean, the almost 2 years off of football, or the year in that gruesome leg injury. I'm not sure he'll come back the same. But I think if he's healthy enough for at least training camp, you at least give him the opportunity to compete with Haskins. And worst case scenario, if he's not good enough to beat Haskins out, you have Alex Smith sitting behind Dwayne Haskins, and we saw what he did for Patrick Mahomes, developing him. He was doing a lot of that last year for Dwayne Haskins. He'll make a good QB coach whenever he retires if he chooses to go into coaching.
Oh yeah.
And he did wonders for Dwayne Haskins' development just throughout the year last year, and then obviously Patrick Mahomes, 50 touchdown man, did a lot for that as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what that team can do. It's a very interesting situation. Again, it goes back to, can Dan Snyder stay away? Just keep him away. That's all you got to do. Keep that guy away, just like the Cowboys needed to do with Jones. And it's the same situation.
The thing is, though, I feel like he's more willing to stay away than Jones is.
I agree.
Because, I feel like with Snyder, he'll stay away, but if he realizes stuff's not working, that's when he puts his nose in. With Jones, it's like, hey, this is my team, and I do what I want, and this is what I want, and this is how we're going to win this championship. That's the big difference between Dan Snyder and Jerry Jones to me.
Yeah, in which, by the way, I did throw a couple of predictions around for the few coaching openings that are opening. So, for starters, in Washington, they need a GM. I think John Dorsey's going to end up there. I mean, that's the only logical landing spot I can see for him is in Washington, unless he takes another year off like he did after he left Kansas City. Cleveland, I think they're going to end up getting Mike McCarthy and Elliott Wolf as their head coach and GM combo. I know Richard will hate that, but I mean, I just don't really see any of his wishes coming true. I think McCarthy's the only person who can step in there and provide that change of culture they need besides an Eric Bieniemy. And with John Dorsey being out in Cleveland, I don't see Bieniemy making his way over there. New York.
Yeah, I'm with you on
New York,
that.
I got the one college coach making a jump. I think Matt Rule ends up in New York as a Giants coach. He's the only college coach I see jumping, especially after that Baylor. They lost the other day, right? Pretty sure they did.
Yeah.
They got waffle stomped, right? So,
Correct.
I mean, now's the perfect time for him to make the exit. The only thing that'll prevent him from making the jump is the same thing that prevented him from jumping to the Jets last year. Is New York going to let him bring his entire staff on like he wanted to last year? Is he going to keep that as a condition? That's the only thing I could really see that'll prevent him going to New York. Carolina, I think they end up with Eric Bieniemy. I think he'd fit perfectly there. They have a lot of similarities of weapons to the Chiefs' offense, just not as refined. They got speed, DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. They got an elite tight end if Greg Olsen doesn't retire. And then they have an elite RB, Mr. 1000, Christian McCaffrey himself. I mean, I think he could get that offense clicking with Cam Newton because I think Cam Newton's future hinges on whoever the coach is down there in Carolina. And then finally, Dallas, since Garrett's going to eventually be gone, even though he's not officially gone. I know McCarthy's on his way to Dallas right now to visit with the Joneses, but I think Chris Richard's going to end up being the man there. They tried really hard last year to keep him from Miami. I don't think you try to keep him unless you believe he could be a potential future head coach in the league. And they just have one sitting in their backyard. They might as well just promote him now. I mean, that's where I stand at it. I think he'll be a great coach in the league.
And I feel like that's why also they like you said, they took so much time in between deciding that, hey, dude, we're just going to let his contract run out. We're not going to make him leave early. Because I think they say it runs out on the 14th.
10 days.
So let him go, do everything. Because, like they say, Garrett it's like family to the Joneses. So, they're going to just let him take his time in leaving. They're going to give him the respect that they feel like he deserves. And then, like you say, promote Richard. Because why else would you be drawing this out and putting yourself behind the 8 ball when it comes to coaching changes? Yeah. So I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, which the only other coach I could see end up winning the Giants is Jason Garrett himself, Mr. Clappy. Because I mean,
go clap for the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, from what we were hearing, like November, I think, if I remember correctly, the Giants, they would like Garrett to come be their head coach. Mara likes him as a coach, so if he does end up letting his contract expire and he doesn't take another role within the Cowboys organization, and New York Giants don't let Matt Rule bring his entire staff over and he stays at Baylor, Jason Garrett, I think, ends up in New York as well.
Because don't forget, Garrett was quarterback up in New York as well for a couple of seasons. So basically, the Giants organization, they do have some from as part from facing him twice a year every year. They do have some familiarity with him inside the organization
Yeah.
as well. Well, that was a nice, interesting, refreshing talk to help me get over this 8-8 season, and Garrett, we're going out the door now. Thank you, gentlemen. I feel better. But
We don't want that. We don't want you to feel better. You're a Cowboys fan.
well, too late. I feel better.
Damn it.
All right, let's go back to the NBA and let's talk about a process that to me irritates the hell out of me. The All-Star selection process for starters. To me, I feel like it's completely flawed and obsolete system at this point because, I mean, don't get me wrong, fans to me should have some input as to who the starters is. Like, let's take their vote and make it a percentage of the influence of who gets to participate in the All-Star game because, I mean, for heaven's sakes, we have Taco Fall and we have Alex Caruso that are actually in consideration right now to actually be All-Star starters.
Yeah, Fall is 6th in the East front court, and then Caruso is 8th in the West backcourt.
Oh, he's 8th now? He was 9th last time I checked.
Yeah,
See?
the last one that came out, he was 8th,
my
and then
God.
Taco was 6th.
And then also...
And Taco played his first minutes, just like 2 weeks ago?
And the fact...
in garbage
I know
time?
Shane won't appreciate
And the fact also...
that needs to be had.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just the fact that... And then Klay Thompson's on the ballot, which we all know he's not going to play this year. So why is he even on the ballot, But, Max, if I sit there and I was commissioner of the NBA and I tell you, I want you to fix the All-Star selection process, because that'd probably be one of the first things I changed once I got in there. How would you revamp it?
I'd revamp it by allowing the fans to vote, but only allowing it to count for 25% of the total vote. Then you have the players that get the other 25% to bring it up to 50. Mm-hmm. And then you bring in writers, and they get the 50% of the vote, the other half. And that's the way I would see it, or that's the way I would have it done. You might be able to flip-flop it, writers 25%, and players and people in the actual league accounting for 50% of the vote, something like that. Because as fans, we're dumb, and we do stupid things. And was it yesterday that they had your vote counted as 2 votes?
I think it was Thursday.
Thursday, yeah. So your vote counted for 2 votes on Thursday. So,
gosh, Max, I can tell you don't pay attention to our page because I had it up there. No, I'm just messing with you.
Yeah. No, I was trying to remember. I pay attention. I look at it every day. Damn it. No, so you've got that. Essentially, what it reminds me of is 2014, 2015, when the Royals were getting all these players voted into the All-Star game. Omar Infante.
I actually had that noted down. I looked at the voting. In 2016, before he got DFA'd, he was 2nd in All-Star voting.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And if you get a fan base that loves a particular player or gets the idea of like, let's vote everybody on our team,
Kansas City got.
And they, yeah, we were like, fuck it, we're gonna vote, like 100 times a day. Watch this shit. Oh, we'll create emails to vote our guys in, and we almost got. I mean, we were pretty close to getting a whole starting lineup.
Got like 6 in,
into the All-Star game at one point. Yeah, 6 in, and the remainder of the players, were reserves or on the cusp of being reserves, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you can't allow fans to do stuff like that because they're going to get wild ideas and try to essentially break the system. So, honestly, you can only give them so much power when it comes to these things. And the NBA All-Star game, the whole All-Star weekend is such an event now thanks to David Stern, that in order to make it as enjoyable as possible, you have to take the fans out of it to a certain extent. Allow them to maybe vote in the last like 2 players or something like that, or whatever. Just don't give them the ability to pick every single person and get Taco Fall in or Alex Caruso in. It's just it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's laughable, but it's fun to watch. So there's the second side to that where we're talking about this at that point, which is more publicity for the NBA, which brings in more talking about the NBA and puts them at the forefront of the news cycle. So there's 2 parts to it. Sometimes it's beneficial, sometimes it's idiotic. And at this point, it's idiotic when you have those 2 players looking to actually make the All-Star roster.
Because yeah, I mean, I think Max is over here reading my notes because I had pretty much the exact same thing on how to fix it. You just take down the percentage of how much the fans can actually vote. I mean, let them vote as many times as they want, but don't take their votes as like the end-all be-all, because that's where the MLB falls flat. I believe they just recently changed their All-Star voting system where the fans don't get all the say they did back in the mid 2010s. I forget if they did officially change that or not, but
I think they did.
So that's how you got to change it. It's like you just got to change it to where it's like you give the fans like 33% of the vote, and then give the players and coaches the other 66%, and that'll do that. And then if you want to throw writers in there, that's fine. You can bump the fans down to like 20%, and then split it between players, coaches, and writers for the rest of it. Something like that, but the fans shouldn't have 100% of the say. The one thing I really do like about the All-Star process is I love the players get to draft their own teams aspect that they've introduced recently. It adds a lot more, like teams that you wouldn't see. It's like you want Giannis and Luka Doncic to team up, even though I'm pretty sure they're 2 top vote getters, so they won't. You have the opportunity to see that in the All-Star game. If you want Ben Simmons passing to Luka, you have an option for that. Jimmy Buckets and LeBron James, you have an option for that. I just love it. I think it provides a nice variety, and it just livens up the All-Star game from the East-West. I know another thing they could potentially do to make it a little bit more competitive, because I know in past years games haven't been very competitive at all, is you could make it to where each team's playing for like a charity or something like that, and the NBA donates like $500,000 each to the winning team's charity. That might spice things up and give it a little bit more competition as well.
All right. Well, as new commissioner, I like both of your ideas. Start tomorrow.
Deal.
All right. Let's move on to a hot button topic with me. The National Collegiate Athletic Association, or as most people know it, the NCAA.
The biggest fraud in sports.
Yes. Thank you. The biggest fraud in sports, in my opinion. And I'll chime in a little bit, but Jerry, I've been waiting to hear this because I know you've been telling me in our pre-production meetings that you that you're loaded and you're ready to go on this. So I'm turning you loose.
Let's start this for starters. Are you guys familiar with Mississippi State's sanctions they got levied in 2018?
I've heard about it.
No.
So essentially what happened is, let me pull up the article real quick. So essentially what happened is very similar to what happened with Mizzou this past year, where self-investigated sanctions, they reported to the NCAA, they were very compliant. So it was a lot of, I'm just pulling it up here. They had pretty much tutors that helped, that pretty much did student athletes assignments, 10 of them to be exact. Mizzou had 12. The sanctions Mississippi State got, they got scholarship reductions and probation. What Mizzou got, they got scholarship reductions, bowl ban, postseason ban for both baseball and softball, and scholarship reductions. So right there, that's like, how are you going to do 2 pretty much identical issues and give 2 completely separate sanctions and allow one to compete in the postseason the year after it happens, and then don't allow the other one? And the biggest issue I had with the whole NCAA investigation after Mizzou appealed it is they took from July until pretty much the last game of the season to declare that Mizzou was going to be ineligible for the bowl season. So it's like you're going to take 5 months to investigate, 4 or 5 months to investigate something whenever you already had an answer back in July, and if you weren't going to do anything, why did you waste your time? It's like you're giving you're giving those seniors false hope that Mizzou fought to keep, saying, "Hey, we're going to fight this and we're going to get it overturned," and then you just break their hearts by saying, "Oh, sorry, you're getting a worse sanction than Mississippi State, who did the same thing as you." It's like, how are you going to do that?
Well, you can tell by these sanctions who the NCAA favors over other teams.
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
Look at what's happening at Kansas, or look at what hasn't happened at Kansas. Considering we had that ticket scandal for the boosters,
you got the whole FBI investigation with the Adidas.
Yeah, I mean stuff like that, and nothing has happened. As a Kansas fan, it makes me happy, but at the same time, I'm like, why hasn't anything happened to them when other teams are getting, major punishments? There was also the pretty much a no punishment for North Carolina when they had the whole tutoring
the fake
scandal.
classes thing,
or the fake classes scandal there, where and nothing happened to them. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on about all these different, one team will have the same infractions as another, and one will get, damn near a death sentence, and the other team's like, oh, we're going to just continue as business as usual and promise never to do that again.
That's the main reason I brought up. That's the main reason I brought up Mizzou and Mississippi State. They're both in similar categories to what the NCAA would view like their programs. It's like Mississippi State. The only thing I could think is they have a decent baseball program. That's the only thing I could think of why they didn't get postseason ban or anything like that. But I mean, as far as that, they're on similar levels in the rest of their sports. It's like, why are you gonna levy this to one team but not do the exact same thing to another team and then give them worse sanctions? It's like you're just a corrupt organization. It's like, I think if the teams could leave and they could self-sustain themselves, I think they would.
And I mean,
well, yeah, you've got that aspect, and then you've also got the individual player aspect, no matter what sport it is. Where they'll levy heavy sanctions against a certain player for one accepting money, or getting paid for an autograph, or getting free food. What
like James Wiseman at Memphis?
What team was it where the coach had a barbecue and they got a suspension or something like that for having a barbecue for the players at like the coach's house after?
I haven't either.
Yeah, so they're, yeah. Oh, and it was a big school too. Oh, what was it? Oh, I can't fucking think of it right now. But yeah, seriously, like the coach had like a barbecue in his backyard and got in trouble by the NCAA for giving out food to his players. That is seriously how ridiculous the NCAA is.
The NCAA is a shame of an organization.
At Tennessee.
Yeah, Bruce Pearl. That's it.
This
is
back in 2010.
I remember that now. I thought you were talking about another, because I was like, I remember it had, like you said, with a big school. I was ready to remind us, like, it had to be the SEC, and sure enough, Bruce Pearl in Tennessee. But yeah, like I said, the NCAA is a shame of an organization, because, like you said, it's basically, all right, like you said, Kansas, they bring in a lot of money in basketball, so that's okay. We'll turn a blind. We'll slap you on the wrist this time. Don't do it again. And Kansas, to make a good show, you cry like a little kid, but at the end of the day, you realize. And I'm not beating it as a shot, but I'm talking about like a little kid would, when they realize their parents actually letting them off lightly, but you don't want them to say, maybe that was too light of a punishment. So you sit there and you cry, make a big fuss, and then you go sit down somewhere and just hope they don't remember. Well, wait a second, you did this too. But and I mean, let's look at the transfer. Let's look at transfers, for example. I mean, at Virginia Tech, we have one offensive lineman who wanted to transfer from East Carolina for legitimate reasons, because he wanted to be closer to his mother, who's not in the best of health. Nope, you got to sit out a year. And you have all these guys though who request a waiver, and I
Justin Fields is the
mean,
big one that comes to my mind. It's like I think he claimed like racism at Georgia or something like that. Why he couldn't get a starting job and then he transferred to Ohio State and got immediate eligibility. It was something like that.
I mean, if you listen to some of the other reasons too, it's like, how can you go? There are reasons that are just completely ridiculous that you're allowed them to get that waiver to transfer it immediately, but you have this guy who, like you say, he wants to only because he's too close to Virginia Tech to transfer with immediate eligibility. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, it's like I think he was like
He
5 miles too close to transfer and have immediate eligibility. And it's like, are you serious?
right. It's like, oh, 5 miles. It's not his fault. That's where the schools are located. You know, but and
Well, heck, what was it? A couple of years ago, the it was at Kansas. It was for Udoka
I remember
Azubuike.
that.
His 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 mom. He's African, so his mom hasn't seen him play in the States at all, and they had to garner special requests to actually fly his mom to the United States to
yeah,
watch her son
I
play.
remember that too.
Like like you have to jump through all these hoops to make stuff like that possible. When you're talking about an organization and a university that has boatloads of cash, they should be able to help out their players, should be able to at least afford them the ability to, fly their parents in or whatever. Because these are players. They are generating money for your organization. They are bringing recognition to your organization. Why not help them out a little bit? They put their bodies through hell. They have the weirdest schedules. Not only do they have to be an athlete, but they have to be a student as well to be able to play. So it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, all these different rules and regulations that the NCAA has are almost pointless in my opinion.
And here's the other thing too. All right, let's just say, for instance, any other student that's there that's not an athlete. Okay, if they want to sit there and sell their services to basically get a job, they can. There's no organization watching them saying you can't do this or that or whatnot. I mean, but these student athletes, they have to basically watch every last dollar that they either get or receive. I mean, they receive or spend, because it could cost you the eligibility for amateurism. I hope you all caught the air quotes that I used, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's ridiculous. But we all know what it boils down to. It boils down to how much money can you make the NCAA? Because
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm gonna say it right now, the James Wiseman situation is just incredibly ridiculous. Okay, if I don't care if Penny Hardaway did it only because, hey, here's I want you to be able to perform at your best, so here, I'm going to help you. The fact is, what he chooses to do with his own personal funds is his business for the most part. You know,
Well, the thing that was so ridiculous
but
about Wiseman is the fact that they put like a $12,000 fine on him. It's like, how do you expect him to pay that fine if he's not making money off his name?
and he can't make it, and yeah, he can't make any money
Well, and didn't they put a stipulation on that where he had to pay it before like a
before he
certain date? Which
before he could play. Yep, and he had to be back, I think,
yeah,
before the end of
I think he was
December,
supposed to be back the first
if I
game
remember
of
correctly.
yeah,
January.
some
And if I was,
yep.
and I'd do the same thing that he did if I was him. To hell with
I'm
y'all.
out.
Both middle fingers up. Yeah, both middle fingers up. Hey, I'm going to the NBA draft lottery anyway, so I'll be a lottery pick.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like the most ridiculous
yeah,
one that I've
it's
ever seen is, do you guys remember the UCF kicker who was ruled ineligible because they had a YouTube account that he was making money off monetization for?
Yeah, I do remember that.
It's like that
That's,
was just so
yeah,
ridiculous. Like the NCAA told him, it's like, you have to shut down your YouTube channel or you're ineligible to play. I forget exactly what he did, but it's like, why does it really matter that much? It's like he's making a little bit of money on the side. It's like, I believe that college players should be allowed to have part-time job that they really wanted to, and that's what that was for that young man.
Exactly. If you're not going to pay them to perform at this thing that they're making you money at, then at least allow them to go use their name to however they can make money off of their name and make a living. Because and for the ones that say, well, they get to go to school and whatnot, so do the other students on campus. They get to go to
And they
school
get to make
too,
money.
and a lot of them get to use. Yeah, but like you said, they get to make money, and there's no organization saying, "Oh, since you have a part time job, you can't go to school." You know, so why do these athletes have to jump through that hoop? If the NCAA, if a notification came across my phone tomorrow that says the NCAA is going belly up and they're out of business,
Party time.
I will live stream the clog dancing that I will do. I will find clogs and I will live stream it for everybody's viewing pleasure. I mean, I don't like to see people be put out of work, and I don't like to hear of any organization basically going belly up. But the NCAA is one of those, or they're one of those special occasions where I would celebrate the day that they go out of business.
Yeah, disband those crooks and bring back NCAA football and basketball, please.
Because, like Jerry said, if the conferences, and it's the conferences, if they were smart enough to realize, hey, we could, if we go back to being a regional thing, we could be self-sufficient, But no, you're greedy to the point where Florida wants the Texas money and the California money and the California players and the Texas players and the New York players and the Tidewater players and the Michigan players, and so. But like I said, if you sit there and you go back to those regional roots and build yourself back up without the NCAA's involvement in it, I feel like overall it'd be better for college athletics, because now you have guys coming in that want to be there as opposed to the one and dones in college basketball, which I feel like is one of the most ridiculous rules also, because, hey, if the guy doesn't want to be here, why is the NBA making him perform in college for a year or go overseas? And why are these college teams basically saying, okay, well, hey, come here for a year and then go pursue the NBA like you
which
want?
is why I'm kind of glad the NBA is getting their G League going. It's like it's finally starting to hit its stride. It's like they're starting to finally give an alternative to players who don't want to go to college for play basketball for a year. It's like they're giving them the option where they can go play in the G League for 1 year and then enter the draft. It's like I think that's a great opportunity for all those players that have no interest.
That's a great idea.
In doing college, because I know college isn't for everyone. I didn't do college. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of that system. I know a lot of players aren't either because they don't like the whole going to class, all that aspect. So I mean, if they know what they're going to do and they know they can make it successful, it's like that's why I'm glad the NBA is doing what they're doing with the G League, because we had OKC's draft pick last year, Darius Bazley. He went to the G League for the year. He played in the G League for the year, and then he got drafted by OKC. It's like if he can make it successful, why can't the rest of these high-end college players like a Cole Anthony or a James Wiseman make it work?
And here's the other side of that for NCAA basketball. So if you get rid of the one and done players, you bring back a complete team more often than not.
Exactly.
And so we could actually see more teams kind of turn into that UCLA from the 70s type team. I think it would make college basketball more interesting, or at least make fans a fan of NCAA basketball longer than just following one player that they know and then they're out of the league and into the NBA. It could revitalize NCAA basketball as a whole and make dynasties a little bit more common, because there's a new team every year, a new hot team. It all depends on how many one and dones you got on your team and how they mesh together for 1 year, and that's it. I mean, sure, you've got your perennial contenders like Kansas, Duke, Villanova, North Carolina, places like that. But I think those teams could morph into, hey, we're going to get like 3 or 4 national championships in a row because we have our returning starters every year. instead of
That's
these
why
one and
Villanova was so
dones.
good in the mid 2010s, is they just had a really good team that they returned year after year. That's why VCU had a decent put together run in the early 2010s, because they had a good team that they could return year after year because they weren't fueled by one and dones. That's why Kansas has success, because they don't rely solely off one and dones. That's why North Carolina has success. They don't solely rely off one and dones. The only team that solely relies off them and are good year in and year out is Duke. It's like they're the only team. Yeah,
Duke
Kentucky.
and Kentucky.
It's like those are the two teams that rely on them. It's like a lot of times they'll get bounced early because they have those young freshmen who don't know how to deal with the adversity. While you have these other teams that you have you have their ability and they have their starters returning that have dealt with that adversity the year before, so they know how to deal with it this time around. So I mean, it would just make it more competitive, and it would put more emphasis on the coaching aspect in college basketball. Sorry, to where you need a good coach if you're going to succeed. You can't rely just solely off one and done talent.
Exactly, and that's why I don't hold Calipari in such a high regard as far as one of the best coaches in NCAA basketball. It solely relies upon his ability to recruit. He's a
Fantastic.
great recruiter, and he gets those one and dones. But you look at a coach like Roy Williams or Bill Self or any one of those coaches, and those guys are just, basketball coaches. They make a team work, and they make them a family, and they turn them into winners. And that's what I would like to see in the as far as NCAA
Yeah.
basketball is concerned. I mean, I don't care about one and done players. I actually have a very high distaste for them because Kansas has been burned
Wiggins
by
and
the one
Embiid.
and done. Yeah, exactly that. Or what was that guy a couple years ago? Cliff something. He wasn't even eligible to play because
Oh,
of
I'm
NCAA
pretty sure you're talking about Mitchell
violations.
Robinson.
Stuff like no, shit. It was 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. His name was Cliff something. See, and he's not even in the forethought of my mind because it was just
Oh,
a
Cliff
clusterfuck.
Alexander.
I mean, it was just, yeah, Cliff Alexander. Yep. So he had NCAA violations against himself for, I believe, accepting money. I think he accepted like 10 grand or something like that. And they ruled him ineligible to play. And then they got that overturned. He played for like 2 games, and then they benched him because he was just junk. So, I mean, I don't like one and dones. Let him go play in the NBA. Let him go to the G League. Let him go earn money. Because a lot of the times, the guys that are one and dones are looking for the payday anyways. So you take that out of college basketball or college athletics in general, then you don't have as many
Yeah.
controversies. And just let the guys play. The guys that want to be there, the guys that want to have a legacy for that college, the guys that want to be remembered for eternity as one of the greatest of all times at that particular school. I mean, that's what I want to see. And these rules that we have in place now are only hampering the actual product that we're receiving year in and year out.
NCAA belly up. That's our new hashtag on. I tell you, I can't wait till the day that happens. But
Bring back college football.
that's about all the time that. Oh yeah, bring the game back definitely. But the organization itself, oh, go belly up. Before we go though, Jerry, any last words you want to get in?
I mean, playoffs in the NFL will hopefully be good. We have some pretty good matchups. I mean, they all look fairly evenly matched. So knowing the NFL playoffs will all probably be blowouts, but on paper they look good. So I'm hoping for a good postseason. I'm hoping for Patrick Mahomes hoisting the Lombardi in February.
Well, I'm sitting at home watching it with my team, so hey, I'm not going to hate on that. So, uh, Max, you got any final?
Well, um, looking forward to a good weekend of football. Anxious for next weekend to see who we actually play, and hoping that this team can continue their dominance on defense that they've had over the second half of the season, as being one of the top defenses in the NFL, and seeing what Patrick Mahomes can do and see if he can take his legacy to the next step. He's already got the MVP. Next thing we need is a Super Bowl MVP and a Super Bowl trophy here in Kansas City, and I'm really excited. I mean, I'm 30 and I've never seen them in the Super Bowl.
Wait, you're only 30?
Yeah.
Hot.
Yeah, only 30.
Hot damn, man. I'm 30.
But,
I'm 32.
Damn it, Eric. The old man of the show.
You young bucks.
Yeah. You're barely
Dang
older
millennials.
Than me. Oh, okay. Gamer.
Stop with your bebop hip hop recording.
And one last thing. It was finally glad to hear my son's voice after 20 years. I'm sorry I ran out on you and your mother for a pack of smokes when I was 10. I love you, son.
That joke will never get old.
Well, you're getting booted off the group when he gets off of this and can get back to his
Already
phone.
booted Richard.
He deserves it. You just got some pent up aggression against your father that left you. It's all right. I understand. Take it out on me.
All right. Well, that's our episode for this time. Hopefully, Keith will be back with us next time. Until then, enjoy the new year of 2020, everybody.